As I am known to occasionally do, the other day I was thinking about Microsoft's Surface Duo, and I was thinking about just how preposterous this hardware felt the very first time I took it out of its box. There had never been a phone like this ever at any point in human history, and there will likely never be another phone like this again. And I mean that in so many different ways. I genuinely don't think that people who didn't use this phone, who haven't actually held it in their hands, I don't think that they fully understand how not just strange this phone is for, so many different reasons, but how bizarrely impressive this hardware still is in 2025. In a day and age where it seems like there is so much conversation about how thin a device is, we really have to look back at Surface Duo to see the origins of that. This was a device that didn't just open up like this, but it also folded around 360-ish degrees to be in this quote-unquote phone mode. And because of that, Microsoft basically did everything they could to keep this device insanely thin. So much so that even now, when we look at the thinnest devices that anyone's been able to make, there's not much of a difference. And I think that it's actually worth looking at Surface Duo and doing some real close comparisons because, as we've learned over the last few months or so, a lot of these OEMs are kind of flubbing their numbers a little bit, doing some selective measuring to get lower numbers on their thickness measurements. So let's take a closer look at Surface Duo and reaffirm, perhaps, just how crazy impressive this phone really was. And no, I will not be accepting any Surface Duo slander in this video's comment section. Thanks. So what I have in front of me right now is Surface Duo 2, and then the thinnest device that I have currently in my possession, the Oppo Find N5. This thing is marketed as being 4.2 millimeters thick when it is open, and I think it's right around 8.8, 8.9 millimeters whenever it is closed. But we also have a caliper, and we're going to measure these things, and we're going to determine exactly what these things are, and if these 2025 devices have yet surpassed what Microsoft did all the way back in, what was it, like 2019, 2020, something like that, a long time ago. So we'll get our baselines here on the Oppo Find N5, and you can see I am pushed all the way to the end, and I am zeroed out at 0. We'll go ahead and measure the Find N5 when closed, because we don't want to distrust what the manufacturers are saying. We want to measure these things ourselves. And as you can see, there's no screen protector on this device because, as we have now all learned, that does make a difference. We're talking about like fractions of a millimeter. That counts. So since my caliper is very sharp, I'm not going to squeeze this thing down like crazy tight. But I'm going to go, you can see there it's flush, and it's flush on the other side. And we're at 9.24 millimeters. And like I said, this thing is supposed to be like 8.8, 8.9. And I'm measuring it at a little bit over 9, so that's just kind of where we are. And then if I open it up and I do the same thing, again, I got to be careful here because it's very sharp. I'm measuring closer to 4.5 instead of 4.2, and the reason for that is because the bezel sticks up just a little bit, and that prevents the screen from touching itself. And when they measure these devices, they measure it here and not here. They don't actually include the bezel. Now, why the closed measurement is not what they say that it should be is a little bit strange to me. But 4.5 when it is opened, and about 9.2, let's just say 9.3 when it is closed, guys. That's just what I'm measuring. So if we measure Duo whenever it is closed, we're at about 9.5 millimeters. And we measured the Find N5 to be about 9.3-ish. So that is very close. And then when you open it, the opened measurement, without having that protruding bezel, should be pretty impressive. We are at 4.88 millimeters, 4.87 millimeters. So we are, 0.3-ish of a millimeter away from the Oppo Find N5. And because it doesn't have a great big camera bump, if you look at it from this perspective, you don't have to worry about that. You can see just how close they are. And I actually should mention this. This does matter. My Duo is cracked. And because of that, I put a screen protector on the outside of the device to hold it together. So you could subtract a little bit of the measurement, a little bit from this device on both of those measurements. Probably something like 0.1, 0.15 of a millimeter. And then when they released the Surface Duo 2, it did get a little bit thicker because they just kind of tried to fit better hardware in there, and they also did add the little camera bump, which definitely does matter. Mine does have a skin on it, so a lot of these things are going to sort of come into play. But you're still 11.5 millimeters when it is closed, and you are still a rather svelte, let's say 6 millimeters when it is open. And again, that is with a sort of faux leather skin on the outside of the device. Maybe it's just me, but it's crazy to think about a device that came out in 2020, which is still measuring less than 5 millimeters when open. Something like the Pixel 9 Pro Fold that I've got sitting here is like, 5.1 millimeters when open, and that's not including the bezel. Like, Microsoft was doing stuff that no one was really approaching at that point when it came to these sorts of crazy folding devices. They were so much thinner than these other phones that it has taken 3, 4, 5 years to truly match them. And I know a lot of these companies have told you that their measurements were less than, but they weren't including the bezels. When you include the bezels, they're really just now passing what Microsoft did. And yes, it's different technology. It's not a folding OLED screen. These are dual screen devices, and there are some caveats there because of that. But again, guys, I just think that it's really, really impressive what Microsoft did, and it is just another reason why, for me, it is a huge shame that they did not pursue this further and we never got a Surface Duo 3. For me, a Surface Duo 3 that maintained the dual screen concept that made these devices the absolute productivity workhorse that they were. There has still, again, for my money, there has still never been anything that has matched the seamless, easy, intuitive multitasking of Surface Duo. A device like that is still about this thick, which is still competitive with all the other folding phones on the market with a modern chipset, and, several more years of Microsoft working on their software, which was really starting to become fairly decent. It's actually really funny now when you look at what we kind of got in the end with their version of Android. It looks weirdly similar to Material 3 Expressive. When you look back at it, it's like, was Microsoft kind of onto this stuff already? They were really beginning to make some progress with their software. I can't tell you how much I wish that device actually existed, because that device might be my number one most anticipated device, and it makes me sad every time I pull these phones out of the old tech closet to take another look at them. I love them so much in concept, and even though they weren't always the best in practice, man, what they got right was really right and is still really right in 2025. Guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I'll see you on the next one, and until next time, stay nerdy, my friends.